Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Living in Faith with your Lisa. So, today I have a message for you from the book of Exodus, chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4, and also Genesis, chapter 19. So, we'll be looking at two people, and we'll be looking at the life of Moses, which is in Exodus, and then the life of, not the life, but like the person specifically, Lot's wife, which is in Genesis, chapter 19. And we will basically be tackling regret in this conversation. We'll be tackling regret, and also we will also be tackling basically learning to let go of regret and trust God with your life and what God has said concerning you. And yeah, without wasting any more time, let's just get straight into it. So the first person that we will look into is Moses. So now with Moses, we see that basically he grew up in an Egyptian household. And since he grew up in an Egyptian household, he did like the things of like he followed the Egyptian traditions, but he knew in his heart and like you could see that he was a Hebrew. And he was basically seeing how the Egyptians were mistreating the Hebrews. And because of that, like he had a desire in his heart to save like the Hebrews basically. But then the thing happened that he saw an Egyptian mistreating a Hebrew, and he took matters into his own hands. And what did he do? He killed the Egyptian. So news went out, they spread like wildfire, and it got to the Pharaoh's ears, and the Pharaoh heard that, oh my goodness, I have raised a person who is killing my people, the Egyptians. And basically Pharaoh was like, now this person needs to be killed, because why? And then basically now Moses fled out of fear that he will be killed. And he was like, I did the right thing. Like, it's what I felt like I should do. What I felt was right, because this person was beating up a Hebrew. And if I did not step in, maybe that Egyptian would have killed or murdered the Hebrew. So he felt like he did what was right. But out of fear, he ran for his life. So he ran and fled to Midian. And when he fled to Midian, he stayed there for a couple of years as a fugitive in an unknown land, like in a land that he did not even know. And he was like, nah, he was basically afraid of going back, because what if Pharaoh is still alive and he still wants to kill him and want to have him murdered, And then he stayed there for a couple of years. And then now we get to see that God now basically speaks to him as he was herding his sheep, because he was taking care of his father-in-law's flock. So I was taking care of them, and then he saw a burning bush, like this bush is on fire. And now since it's on fire, he was like, oh my goodness, it's on fire, but it's not burning. So out of curiosity, we see that Moses actually goes to see this beautiful, but kind of, I think like it's kind of scary-ish, but a beautiful scene, like of seeing a burning bush, but it's not burning, but you see the fire on it. And he went there, and out of and God spoke to him and called to him and said, Moses. And now Moses was like, here I am. And God was like, basically, take off your shoes. Now I'm just telling you that, like, I'm summarizing the story to you now. Take off your shoes, and then God spoke to Moses. And when God spoke to Moses, we see this conversation between Moses and God. God telling Moses that, Moses, I'm calling you to save my children. I've heard their cries. I've seen all the bad that has been done to them, all the punishments and all of that. God is basically saying, I've been seeing and hearing their cries, and I've been seeing the pain that they have been in. And now as their Father, as their heavenly Father, I am stepping in, and I need you, Moses, to partner with me so that I'd save my children from the hands of the Egyptians and take them to the promised land, the land that is filled with milk and honey. So now we hear God express his steadfast love for his children. And Moses is like, God, you're choosing the wrong person. You know who I am, God. You know I got a problem. Basically he's basically telling God, reasons. He's giving God reasons why he should not pick him. And God is saying, I created you. I know you. Like, I know your end from your beginning. I'm the one who gives a speech, like, dim, because now, like, we see that Moses was even like at a point of saying, God, you know that I stutter. And God was like, I created you. I know that you stutter, but I'm calling you to save my children. And we see this back and forth. And then God is like, what do you have on your hands? And you see this in chapter 4. And then basically what Moses had was a staff. He had a staff in his hand because, like, why? He was herding the sheep. So he had a staff in his hand, and God was like, give me that staff. And basically it was like he threw it down, and then when he threw down the staff, it turned into a snake, you know. And then he was like scared. He started running away. I would run too, because why? A staff turning into a snake, I would run too. And then he ran. And then God's like, come back, you know. And yeah, and then basically as we get to see the life of Moses and how God worked through him and worked with him, we see all these miracles, these signs, these wonders that God performed through Moses, and with the staff that Moses willingly gave to God. Because with that staff, that same staff, we see that God used to part the Red Sea. There's so many things that God used with that staff to literally bring forth miracles and signs and wonders so that his children would believe in him and see him as their heavenly Father, you know. And also for Moses to know that God is God, that God is the I am. Who I am who I am, that he's Elohim, that he is Yahweh. So not only was Moses partnering with God to restore his people back to God, but also Moses was on a journey of knowing God on an intimate and personal level. So now what I want to tackle using Moses's story is basically how that God may be calling you right now to something that like you did before. Like there was a desire that God had placed inside your heart. And maybe you did things your way, you know, because sometimes we be moving when God speaks, but along the way we get caught up by other things and we forget the vision that God has given us. We forget the instruction that God has given us, because why? We tend to edit what God says so that it suits what we think is best. So now we do and move on our own instead of relying and depending on the Father who knows best. So now, right now, I feel like there are some people that God is calling them to do things that they did in the past, but it did not work out. And God is saying it's time for you to revisit the dreams that I placed inside of you. It's time for you to revisit the instructions I gave to you 3 years back. It's time for you to revisit those instructions and do them as I say, but this time lean on God. This time depend on God. This time rely on God. This time walk in the pace that God is directing you, Ngayo. This time let God be the driver. Let God be the one who is in control of the steering wheel of the pace, you know, of the speed of your car, the speed of your life. Let God be the one who is magnified. But now build on God. Don't do things on your own, but rely and depend on him. And when we see, because one thing about regret is that regret makes you feel like you're not qualified. Regret makes you think that nothing good can come out of like whatever it is. Like basically makes you feel like nothing good can come out of the now. And regret is a prison, it is a cell, because why? It keeps you in bondage. But the thing about regret is that the bondage you were in is the bondage you allow upon yourself, because you have the keys. You have the keys. You have the key. This is the key. The Bible is the key. A relationship with God is the key. The Holy Spirit is the key. The Son of God, Jesus Christ, is the key. You have him as your key to get out of that jail, to get out of that dark cell. He is the key. You need to trust him. You need to give God what is in your hand. You need to give God basically the things that God asks of you are the things that he has given to you. God will never ask of you something that he has not given you. God will never call you to something that he has not provided for. So when God is calling you, he's saying, give me what I have already entrusted to you. Give me those gifts that I've given to you, and move in the way that I direct you, guide you, and in the pace that I am directing you, guide you. Lean on me, trust in me. And another thing when you are facing or dealing with regret is that you have to forgive yourself. Because maybe in this passage, maybe Moses was also dealing with unforgiveness within himself. Maybe he was blaming himself. Maybe he was like, oh my goodness, I was living there, with Pharaoh and stuff. And now I'm here tending to to sheep, yeah. But I'm tending to sheep. And right now, maybe he was even having regrets in terms of he killed a person, he murdered a person. Maybe he had regrets and stuff like that. But the thing is that God has forgiven us, and this is not basically a leeway for you to do what you want to do and sin. No, trust me, that's not a green light to do, to commit sin. But God has forgiven us of the past mistakes that we have made. God has literally forgiven us, because why? Jesus Christ paid the price in full. He paid the price in full. So stop punishing yourself over sins that Jesus Christ has paid the price in full for. Stop punishing yourself over and over and over again when you are forgiven. Receive God's forgiveness. Receive the way in which he sees you and in the way that he knows you to be. And learn to forgive yourself. If you are having difficulty with forgiving yourself, pray to God and ask him to help you forgive yourself, because you already know that he has forgiven you. Because when you stay in regret, the devil will literally be knocking at your door, and you will find yourself opening that door. Because why? Because you are beating yourself up of things that God has given you freedom from, and that from things that God has also forgiven you of, and you keep on beating yourself up, and the enemy is like, oh, I see a gap there, let me just jump in and do whatever I want to do. Don't be opening doors to the enemy. Forgive yourself, because God has forgiven you, so that you are able to let go of the past and move forward as God is directing you, as God is calling you right now to do something that he called you in the past to do, and maybe you failed miserably at it because you got caught up in other stuff. Now trust God and be like, God, since you're calling me again, I will trust you, because right now I'm not doing this on my own. Moving forward, I am depending on you. Moving forward, God, you lead me. Moving forward, you are Elohim and you are El Shaddai, God, and I am your child and I am your vessel, God. I am willing, because what God is asking from us is a willing heart. What God is asking from us is a mind made up that, God, I will do all that you say, God, that I must do with you, that I will build on you, that I will move as you speak, that you have my hand, and God, Wambanam, we are walking together, that I'm not in this, God, alone, but Father, you are with me. And then now we're going to look into the life of Lot's wife. Now, with Lot's wife, with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, basically, when God was coming and bringing forth judgment on the city of, was it the city of God? I don't know. But bringing judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah. and then right now, God sent his angels to basically set the whole place on fire, because they were doing a lot of messy stuff there. The people of the place were doing so many hideous things that were detestable in the sight of God, and God wanted to basically just wipe out that entire generation, not generation, but that entire nation, because of the things that it was doing. So basically now we get to see that basically as God sent his angels to basically go and wipe out the whole entire place with fire. Prior to that, we see that Father Abraham had spoken to God on behalf of Lot and his family, And now the angels came because of Father Abraham's basically conversation with God, having talked with God on behalf of Lot to save him. And now we see that the angels come and actually speak to Lot, and also, like, okay, I'm not going to go deep into that, but also the angels come and tell Lot that, okay, God is bringing about judgment into the city, and this is what God is planning on doing, and that God was saying that he was rescuing Lot and his family. So now the angels give Lot and his entire family basically an instruction that they must run and don't look back. That was the instruction. Run and don't look back. Just run forward and don't look back. So what did that mean? They had to leave everything they owned. Just get what you gotta get and run. That's it. Don't look back. Simple instructions, but not really simple if you have your heart set on what is behind. Right? So now we see that as they are running, Lot's wife looks back, and when he looks back, and when she looks back, she turns into a pillar of salt. And that was the end of her. So what did they have to do? They had to leave her behind and keep on running forward. So what I have to say in regards to Lot's wife is that stop looking back. Some people, or like some of us, let me just say some of us have this habit of looking back. This habit of looking back out of the places that God has literally rescued us from. Looking back like from places that like God has saved us from, like things that God delivered us from, and we are looking back. And as we are looking back, we are dying. We are literally dying, because looking back shows and tells God that, God, I don't trust you. The more you look back, the more you have regrets. It's more of saying, God, I don't trust you. You don't say it with your mouth, but your heart says, God, I don't trust you. So basically, you are able to look back if you think that the best is in the past, that it can't get any better. Because why? Because the best was in the past. Or maybe you are punishing yourself of the things that you went through in the past, and you're like, if only I made certain decisions, if only I did not take certain steps, if only. Now you're looking back thinking that if only I did things differently, maybe I wouldn't be where I am right now. And God is saying, you need to trust me. Trust me with where I am taking you. Trust me with the plans that I have for you. We are not strong enough to do things that would literally like make God surprised and be like, oh my goodness, how am I going to restore this person? How am I going to like do what I intended to do? We are not that strong enough. So stop thinking that you are that powerful enough, or the sins that you committed, or the mistakes that you made, or the failures that you basically incurred along the way, that they are too big, that God cannot restore you and redeem you from, because that's why you were looking in the past. And now God is saying, you got to let go of that. You got to look to him. You got to trust him. You got to depend on him. You got to rely on him. Because why? Because not all your years are wasted. God says that I will restore all the years that the locusts have eaten, the big and the small swarm of locusts, that I will restore those years. Trust God with what is ahead. You might have made mistakes in the past. You might have failed in certain things. Like you could have made better decisions in the past, that could have landed you in a better place than you are currently. But that did not happen. Now you're finding here in a position whereby like you are where you are, and you are unhappy, and God is saying, trust me. God is saying, trust me. Give all of that to me, and I will show you that I will do exceedingly abundantly above all that you think or begin to imagine, according to the power that is at work within us. God is saying, give him what is in your hands. Give him what is left of your life. Give him your trust. Just trust God, and he will restore you, and he will renew you, and he will literally work miracles, signs, and wonders, as we see in the life of Moses, that it was up until Moses willingly gave God his staff that God performed those signs, those miracles, those wonders, as God literally rescued his children from Egypt and into the wilderness, because from the wilderness the children of God were taken into the promised land by Joshua. but we're not there. But what we willingly give to God, He's able to work miracles, signs, and wonders. Whatever it is, stop thinking that the best was behind, because the best is still to come. Whatever you willingly give to God and trust Him with concerning yourself, God will work miracles, signs, and wonders for you. We see also in the New Testament with Jesus, when Jesus basically multiplied the loaves of bread, the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and literally it fed multitudes of people, thousands upon thousands of people, and there were even leftovers. But that boy needed to hand over to Jesus what he had, though in his eyes it was just a lunchbox that could not, in his own eyes, feed like all those people. But he was not hoarding that lunchbox, but he willingly gave it to Jesus, and Jesus worked miracles, fed thousands upon thousands of men and women and children, and there were leftovers. There were leftovers. So trust God. Forgive yourself of the past mistakes. Forgive yourself. Ask God to help you forgive yourself. Ask God to help you trust Him. Ask God to help you surrender to Him what is in your hands now, and trust God and have confidence in God that He will work miracles, signs, and wonders with what you give to Him. These signs, these miracles, these wonders don't have to be materialistic. They can be literally you basically drawing closer and nearer to God, hearing the voice of God more loudly than before, and literally the word of God coming alive before you, and knowing the heart of God concerning you. These signs, miracles, and wonders that I'm talking about don't necessarily have to be materialistic, but these signs and wonders could be literally like your intimacy with the Lord, getting to know God for yourself, and knowing that I can hear from God. You can personally hear from God on your own, that when you are in the Word with the Lord, that you are able to hear from Him because He speaks to you. So these signs, miracles, and wonders could be you partnering with God. Just like we have seen how Moses partnered with God, how he was like, God, I am your vessel, use me. And through his partnership and through his obedience to God, there was intimacy with the Lord. That God even referred to Moses that he was his own friend. Imagine the Lord Elohim, God like the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, calling a human being a friend. So it can grow into something as beautiful as that when we let go of the past, when we forgive ourselves and we surrender to the good Lord, and we give to God what is in our hands and trust Him and have confidence in Him. So today, I urge you to literally let go of the past. Grab the keys and spend time in the presence of God. Trust the Father. Trust His heart concerning you. And know that the best days are not behind, but the best days are ahead, because Jesus has already gone ahead of us, prepared the way for us. And what has He done? He has made our crooked path straight. So trust in the Lord, rely on Him, depend on Him, let go, forgive yourself, and literally just hold on to God, because this is the key. Nothing else. A relationship with God is the key. So thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.